I'm Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm. So here at DOE, we're working on delivering the clean energy revolution to your doorstep day in and day out. We are dreaming up and developing, demonstrating, deploying new technologies that can deliver clean power to communities all across the country. You name it: wind, solar, EVs, clean hydrogen, geothermal, electric, hydroelectric power, biomass, energy storage, all of the above. But we here at the department are only one part, of course, of this clean energy question. There's so many variables involved in reaching the president's ambitious goals of getting to 100% clean electricity by 2035 and a net zero economy by 2050. So today we are going to talk about two of these variables, which is innovation and entrepreneurship. And I am so thrilled to have some incredible women joining me today. So Dr. Etosha Cave, Jessica O. Matthews, and Natalie King. These three are doing amazing things to power up our clean energy economy in a big way, and I'll let them say it, but I know it's from driving energy efficiency forward in our homes and in our hometowns, to using carbon to make everyday products out of thin air. So between all of them, they hold, get this, 7 degrees, dozens of patents. They employ hundreds of folks across the country. They are also a part of a long lineage of Black women who have made an incredible impact on our nation, an impact, honestly, that we have failed to recognize for far too long. They are an example for so many who haven't seen themselves necessarily represented in enough in the fields of STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math, and in business and in leadership. So I am so thrilled that you are here. It's an honor to have you. So I'm going to start by asking you to tell us a little bit more about yourselves. So let me start with Natalie, and then Jessica, and then Etosha.
I started Dunamis in 2012. So it's a 10-year-old energy efficiency firm. We provide energy efficiency solutions for commercial and industrial customers. We've done energy management for a number of years, but in 2018, I decided to venture off into the electric vehicle infrastructure space. So almost 4 years later, we are launching our plant right next to the old Packard plant on East Grand Boulevard in Detroit. We're launching this year. We are the first Black woman-owned electric vehicle charger manufacturer in this country. So we're really excited about where we're going and what we're doing. And we're going to be hiring directly from the community to make sure that Black and brown communities are integrated into this new industry.
That is what I'm talking about. In Motown.
In Motown, the Motor City. That's
All
it.
right. That's great. And I think you're also a U of M grad, if I'm not mistaken.
I am. Go Blue.
Okay.
Go Blue. Absolutely.
Okay, Jessica, go.
Love it. Thank you so much, Secretary Granholm. I am so honored to be here. I normally like to introduce myself as saying that I strive every single day to be the love child of Beyonce and Bill Nye the Science Guy in everything that I do. Now, what's great about this call is that I'm starting to think that we might have a few Bill Nye Beyonce love children going on already. And that's a very rare place to be. When I'm not actively really more working hard on the Beyonce part. The Bill Nye side is easy. Beyonce, she's a hardworking woman. So that's the hard part. I've been really excited to focus in on data issues and the way that they impact not just how all of these technologies that we want for a fully electrified world to come about, but really how do we think about accelerating the equitable development of things like electric vehicle chargers and et cetera, really with the focus on reducing the stakeholder coordination issues that come down and relate to the data and the planning. And so we have a data fusion platform that helps small and medium-sized cities organize their data, streamline their planning so that they can work with stakeholders and get them the data that they need to actually do the development that they have to do. We work right now with a lot of organizations around the country that are excited to get in the game and help cities get the infrastructure that they need.
When you think about one of the biggest barriers to deploying clean energy. It is always about hurdles on the ground. You guys are in this space to clear that out. You know, entrepreneurs, leaders, scientists, engineers. Speaking of engineers, Etosha, hit it.
Yes, first, I want to say I am super humbled to be on this panel. I am merely on my first startup, and hearing Natalie and Jessica didn't mention this, but I am aware of her previous entities that she has started. So I'm in the company of seasoned entrepreneurs, and really excited to be on this panel with all three of you. So thank you again, Secretary, for inviting me. So my background is I grew up in Houston, Texas. And I grew up in a neighborhood that was directly affected by an oil and gas waste site. And that, even though my family wasn't directly affected because we were slightly upstream of that, but seeing friends and neighbors who were kind of going through this situation where this waste had leached into the water supply and was linked to a higher rate of rare forms of cancers and diseases, it really impacted me. It made waste and clean tech and just environmental issues really, really personal for me. And so I, because I gravitated toward engineering, math, and science, I the entire time in my high school, then undergrad, and then graduate school, I really looked at how can I use my skills and talents towards something that will help other communities like mine that had this situation that affected them so greatly. And so, when I started my graduate work at Stanford, my advisor was looking at ways as how do you take waste carbon dioxide and actually make something out of it such that you don't have to merely throw it away anymore. As we all know, like the story of waste carbon dioxide has become very personal for not just folks in the U.S., but also globally with increased CO2 emissions and global warming and climate change. And so his first answer to that was, what if we could engineer metal catalysts that could convert carbon dioxide into newer products or new molecules? And we identified 16 new molecules we could make with this process. And then toward the end of my Ph.D., I approached one of my lab mates named Kendra, and I said, what if we could not only engineer these metal catalysts, but also scale it up in industry and make this a reality, make this something that companies can utilize to convert their CO2 waste into something useful. And so we teamed up with my now third co-founder, Nicholas, and the three of us started 12. And 12 is a carbon transformation company. We take CO2 and we use metal catalysts and all of this renewable electricity that we're building across the country. This, as you mentioned earlier, the wind and the solar and the hydro. And we use that surplus electricity to convert carbon dioxide into things like jet fuel, into things like materials, like polymers that would go into your car, components in consumer products, building materials, all of these materials that we use and love today, because we fundamentally see carbon not as something that is inherently bad. It's an amazing molecule from a science perspective, but it's just the way that we throw it into the atmosphere
we waste
is the part that adds too much sense.
So do you end up, just curious about the capturing of the CO2, you end up, does it effectively get sequestered in these products?
Yeah, so when we make a polymer, so we actually made a car part, it's called a C-pillar, and it frames one of the back windows. And so there you have that CO2 molecule now in the form of a polymer that's locked into that piece. So you're making a lower carbon footprint polymer.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Why not make CO2 into something useful rather than storing it underground like we're trying to get rid of it, right? I'm curious about, I want to go around and ask you just quickly, sort of a lightning round. Who inspired you to move into clean energy? Now, Etosha, you sort of said it happened from your circumstance, but was there a person who inspired you to move in this direction?
Absolutely. So my mom was a science teacher. She taught at elementary school.
And how about you, Jess?
Oh man, not one person, but a wedding. So I'll say it very quickly. My family's from Nigeria, and Nigeria is the kind of place where you would think it's a socioeconomic issue where people don't have access to reliable electricity, but it's an infrastructural issue. And after going to enough of my family's weddings and losing power, I realized, well, I can't have my wedding this way. And I can't seem to have my family go through this. And so after a wedding that I went to for my aunt when I was 17 years old, I said, I must create something that can bridge the gap between us having all these technologies and having them scale in communities that need them and want them and yet don't have them. So I dedicated my entire adult life to that.
Wow.
That is awesome. That is awesome. How about you, Natalie?
That's amazing. That is
I
so
know.
cool. Need inspires innovation. That is awesome. For me, it was two people. One is you indirectly. In 2007, I'm a lawyer by trade. I practiced law for like 18 years. You were actually my commencement speaker at Wayne State Law School. And I met you in the bathroom and you were so sweet. Like, God bless you. You're going to do great. I know you don't remember that. It was 1999. But, I got into the green energy space by co-founding a solar integration firm. And it was 2007. And you were talking a lot then about bringing green technology to the state of Michigan. And so that prompted my attention to it. There was another individual who was a mentor, a business mentor, who said, hey, I think that if you want to diversify and you're trying to move beyond, your legal practice, this is a great area to go into. Renewables were just kind of the hot ticket item at that time that was being discussed around the country. And started researching the industry and decided to move forward from there into solar. And that really kind of snowballed into the entire energy efficiency field for me.
I love this.
Yeah.
I love this. Okay.
It's fun too, just in case, and even hearing Natalie's story, how I think it's important to highlight the snowball effect, because I don't know, Etosha, if you feel this way too, how you enter this energy space is usually not even where you end up, but it's just any door, any window into the space, especially as women of color. And then as long as you stay in the room, you can grow. The way I entered the space was not as a founder of a data fusion company, I started when I was 19 by inventing an energy generating soccer ball that could harness the kinetic energy during play and store that power inside of the ball. And I started with a play product that could do that, and then just stayed in the space long enough to go from play products that generate energy to infrastructure speed bumps that generate energy to realizing that all of these things can't get interconnected into the grid without a data fusion platform. And then that's when I started to realize all of the data sharing issues at the stakeholder level. And then I built data architecture. And so I think what's fun about this space is that people often think that you have to just come in and already be this expert in everything. But I have found in my career that I was given the space to learn, to grow, to listen, to now get to the point of saying, well, this is the place where I believe I can have the most impact. And I think a lot of people in this space have a more windy story than they think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to speak to that that Jessica mentioned, because I heard about her story in graduate school. I never told you this, but seeing you out there making that soccer ball, I was super inspired. Yeah. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, Jessica kind of has, nudged me in that direction of like starting a company. Because I think fundamentally, like a company, at least a lot of entrepreneurs get into it because they see a problem. They want to bring a solution to that problem into the world and really have impact. And just seeing, that impact-driven focus was really inspiring to me.
I just love this because, there are people who are watching this right now and who are hearing what you guys did and inspired by your stories and are thinking, wow, I see this problem over here. Maybe I should think about how to fix it. Let me just do that. Jessica, I mean, you're thinking about old problems in a new way. Tell us a little bit, for example, about what a smart grid is and why it matters to real people on the ground across the country.
Ooh. At the end of the day, there are a lot of technologies that have been built to try to automate the way we get electricity and how we share electricity. The core, though, of how we can make our grid smarter comes down to how we can think about not just how we use power today, but how we're going to use it tomorrow, and making sure that the whole system can handle it. And so the specific work that we focus in on is really saying, okay, how do we make sure that all the different technologies that are connected that result in us getting power, how do we make sure that they're talking to each other well? And how do we make sure that everything that's utilizing all this power, how do we make sure that those are also communicating well with the people who are giving us the power? Like, a lot of people don't realize that when a car gets plugged in to get charged up, and when an electric vehicle wants to get charged up, that's like the equivalent of half of a house of power. That's a lot of power that has to be basically planned for. And if you don't know where that's going to pop up on the grid at any given time, it's kind of like having kids and knowing your kid is super hungry, but not knowing when your kid is going to pop up or where your kid is. And then they're just going to say, hey, I'm hungry. And you can imagine how stressful that is on the side of the power providers. If they're like, we want to feed you, but we don't know if you're at Bob's house or at Jen's house, and we don't know how hungry you're going to be. And so what that comes down to is really a question of coordination and data sharing, and really looking at how do we ensure that communication is there. And I think for me, a lot of times people say, well, what exactly is a woman's role in the energy world? And I'm like, well, what did I just say? Communication, coordination. My role is that all the things that we really need, women tend to be particularly good at. And that's all it comes down to. Is a smart grid is a grid that has all the data that it needs to be able to proactively handle everything that we expect from power.
And I mean, if you carry your analogy forward, right, it's, and Natalie, of course, you're now in the EV charging space, but of course, as you say, these electric vehicles are huge power sucks. They're very, very hungry, and you got to make sure you have enough food in the fridge to be able to feed them. And that's what the Department of Energy is trying to do, is to add clean energy to the grid. You want to make sure it's powered with solar or renewable energy, clean energy in some way. How do you think about this issue about how much power is being pulled when that charger and that vehicle are charging?
Absolutely. You have to create a holistic model in order to be able to achieve the true benefit that can come from EV charging. It is absolutely essential that you apply the tenets of energy management to the electric vehicle charging infrastructure rollout. So integration of renewables, because like Jessica said, if you're doing DC fast charging, you are doing, I think one guy said, it's like planning for a parking structure where you're going to put a DC fast charger, but you didn't plan to put 12 dryers. And that's the equivalent of what you need to power these. Now for, it's one dryer for your home. It's a 220 volt, for a residential charge for level 2. But at the same time, if you don't incorporate the energy efficiency to make the electric vehicle charging infrastructure the most effective and the most efficient, then you really are wasting opportunities to cut the carbon emissions down and to maximize the efficiencies of the system. So renewables, including wind, solar integration, battery storage capabilities, creating additional, substations or power resources using biofuel technologies. All of these things really need to be planned out in addition to the planning of when you charge, how long you charge, working with the utility companies to ensure that you have, the best rates in order, if you're charging at 4 o'clock in the morning to, 8 o'clock in the morning, those types of things. It must be a holistic, integrative approach.
Let me just go quickly to Etosha for a minute, because you've got a whole different, suite of challenges. And as we think about renewables and clean energy, we also have to think about decarbonizing the existing fossil fuel infrastructure, right? Because we're not going to be able to go all renewables right away. We'll still be using fossil fuels. We'll still have that CO2. I'm just wondering, for you, what are the biggest challenges facing your business in the next few years?
Yeah, so we are definitely focusing hard to decarbonize sectors. So that specifically would be long haul, high capacity transportation. So even in a world where you have, an entirely clean electrical grid, you're still going to have CO2 emissions if we still want to have 200 passenger planes, flying across the world, which I think we all want that future. So yeah, so we're looking at, why not make that liquid fuel that we need to fly that plane out of CO2 instead of pulling more carbon out of the ground to fly that plane. So we are using all this electricity that we talked about earlier, that the price is coming down. There's more of it on the grid, these clean electrons. And we're using that to convert carbon dioxide into jet fuel or other products that we use and love today that are made of carbon.
All right. So, okay, I noticed that we've only got a couple minutes, and I want to get your take because you're thinking ahead of what, if we can do a lightning round on what are the new sort of technologies that excite you about the future of energy? Like, do you have a favorite that you're really bullish on?
I think at the end of the day, the reality of the situation is that there are so many technologies that have been created by brilliant people on this planet, and even specifically brilliant Americans. And it is ridiculous that we are living in a world where there are technologies that exist that could create a better world for us today, a better experience for every single citizen, and yet we don't have them at scale. And so what we're really focused on is how do we take all of this innovation and make it a reality so that every single person feels like they have in their community what they need to have roots and wings. They feel like you don't have to leave where you're from to get where you're going. And so to me, the answer is in data. The answer is in coordination and planning. It may not be sexy, but it's what you need to do to make magic real.
Listen, it's data is sexy, as is Beyonce. So Bill Nye, maybe
Yes.
we got to work on. But all right, Etosha, what about you? What is exciting for you?
I'm excited about the general trend of electrification of everything. So, Jessica and Natalie are part of that on the electric vehicle side and of course the grid. But we are part of that with electrifying the chemicals production and making liquid fuel. And there's so many other companies in that space in farming and just other consumer goods. It's just very exciting. Let's electrify everything and build a cleaner energy world.
Totally love it. All right, Natalie.
Absolutely in alignment with Etosha. We definitely electrification. And for me, I'm very excited about wireless charging.
Wireless charging, you either drive on a path that is charging you as you go, or you're stopped at a stoplight and it comes from beneath. You don't have to plug it in. That is the wave of the future. Super exciting. That is a great note to end on. I just want to thank so much Natalie, Jessica, Etosha for this great and energetic conversation. I'm totally awestruck by what the three of you have accomplished and are going to continue to accomplish, because I'm super thrilled to be able to have had this first conversation with you. I look forward to seeing where y'all go, and I want to thank you all who are watching. Thanks everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Secretary.
Thanks.